What's up? What's up? What's up? It's your man Chris Jones, NoVACAIN Kennels. We're on section 4, part 4, and we're going to talk about fish. Once your dogs have been on raw for about 3 to 4 weeks, you introduce the chicken necks, the legs, the quarters, turkey necks, pork, and you started to introduce the beef organs. The next step is to move your dogs onto a little more complex of a protein source, which is fish. And when feeding fish, it is very critical that that you use the entire fish. That includes the head, the eyes, the scales, the guts, and the fins, all of it, the entire fish, because the entire fish contains so much nutrition to begin with. When starting on fish, I like to go straight to using Atlantic mackerel. Atlantic mackerel is very high in omega-3, 6s, and 9s, as well as the DHA and things that are vital to the growth and brain development, as well as nerve development of puppies. So we want to slowly start to introduce fish. Now, the way that I suggest that you start to introduce fish is by mixing it into, your chicken necks, and just chicken necks, because when you do it that way, you're able to, evaluate the stool content a lot easier. If you haven't noticed that I talk about stool in every single video, because your stool, the stool of a dog, would tell you a lot. It would tell you what's actually going on with the dog, if the dog's digesting properly, if the dogs are thriving or not, by the way the stool looks and the stool that comes out of the animal. So you want to slowly start to introduce that in. Like I said, I like to start with using chicken necks, ground chicken necks mixed with ground fish, and give them on the first, not the first, but the second or third day of the week, that mixture. First, you want to give them the first meal of, just chicken necks, and then their second meal, you want to go chicken necks with a little organ. And then for the third meal, you want to introduce the new protein source, which is the fish. And doing that for the third meal, once again, you're going to play around with your dog. You're going to, have your dog have a bowel movement, and evaluate the stool from there. Now, if there's no significant change inside of the stool itself, you can go with your fourth and final meal of the evening with the fish and chicken neck mixture. Once you introduce the fish, which is the last thing that I say introduce to your dogs, and everything has been going well for the remainder of that week, going back and forth using chicken, turkey, beef, organs, pork, and using fish, everything's going well. The dogs are thriving. The dogs are very vigorous, and they're just thriving off of this. From here on out, you can start to double up on or double or triple up on your protein sources to make what I call or consider a Frankenstein mix. By now, you have evaluated your dog, you have studied your dog enough, you have studied their stool enough to know if you need to, if the dog has diarrhea, you can give the pumpkin. If the dog has a loose stool, you can add more bone to it. And from there on, you can start actually going in a fuller direction on how to feed your dog. All right, so once you get through week 4, week 5, give or take, you should be able to really evaluate where you want to go with your dog's feeding program. By then, like I said, the dog should be thriving. The dog has transitioned through the weeks from chicken to turkey to pork to beef, now to fish, which is 5 different protein sources. All right, so after you get week 4, week 5 done, now it's your time to start playing around. Start introducing other protein sources like your goat, your lamb, over time, slowly introducing this in. Or you can start to combine 3 or 4 protein sources to make a Frankenstein blend, because you've already introduced these things to your dog. So now what you're doing is introducing more of a full meal. Now, a couple of you guys are probably like, but dude, from time to time you talk about introducing or vegetable matter. When do we introduce vegetable matter? So with the vegetable matter, if you use pumpkin at any point within the first 4 to 5 weeks, you have already introduced some vegetable matter. So now, once you get to about week 4, week 5, you can now start to introduce like your leafy greens. I typically tell people to start with 1 or 2 things and then start working your way into more leafy greens or more vegetable or fruit matter that you want to introduce to the dogs. The first 2 things I always suggest is going like collard greens and carrots. That way, they're simple enough and they're easy enough to evaluate where the dogs are going from there. So when you actually introduced vegetable matter, what needs to happen with the vegetable matter is you need to puree it up. You need to break it down as fine as you can, to break it down, to release all the nutrition out of the cell walls so it can be absorbed and consumed inside of the dog's body, because that is very vital. It is known for a fact that dogs do not absorb cellulose and stuff like that very well when left whole, but the way to help them absorb the cellulose and the vitamins and nutrients out of the fruits and vegetables is by pureeing it down, releasing it out of the cell walls of the plants itself. So like I said, we went from week 1 to week 4 or 5. You introduced the chicken, the turkey, the fish, the pork, the beef. Everything's going well. Now you introduce the vegetable matter. Everything is still going well. So you just slowly continue to go along, introducing new protein sources, because you have worked out, the minor bugs that you might have had prior to this step, and get your dogs continue on the right path. One thing that you must remember, as the dog grows week to week, puppies grow very rapidly, you must increase their food little by little to make sure that the puppies are consuming enough food to thrive and to be full. Not giving enough food can cause loose stool. Giving too much food can cause your dog to have a loose stool as well. So the balance of finding the right proportions for your dogs is very critical. We'll talk about that on another video as well. But thank you guys for tuning in. If I missed anything with any of these videos, leave comments, man, and I'll make sure that I touch it. I'm going to continue to make puppy videos and specifically talk about puppy things to get your dogs on the right track to eating raw food. I'll also make a video that will address introducing older dogs into the raw food and how I do it. So it's your man Chris Jones, NoVACAIN Kennels. Thanks for tuning in. Stay posted, and I'm out.